Good morning, everybody. Thanks for coming out today. My name's Ted, founder and CEO of Foxhole Homes. And before we get to work this morning, I want to talk to you a little bit about solar power and earthships and kind of how that works. And I want to walk you through the basics of a solar power system and ultimately talk to you about how that works in earthships, but also how you can build a simple solar system for yourself. And we have an example of that here today. So in a solar power system, you've got four basic parts. The first one is a solar panel. Everybody understand that? Yes, pretty straightforward, right? I'm not going to get into all the physics of that, but pretty basic. The next thing is a charge controller, or the next thing that we all know about is battery, right? What's a battery do?
Stores energy.
Stores energy, absolutely. So in between the solar panel and the battery, we have a charge controller. And what that does is that regulates the amount of energy that's coming from the solar panel into the battery, into the storage space, because what you don't want to do is you don't want to overcharge your battery, because that can cause some significant problems with your battery life expectancy, and you can blow them up and that kind of thing. You don't want to do that. So you put a charge controller in between. And then last but not least, anybody know what the difference between AC and DC electricity is? Right? So DC electricity is the kind that we store in batteries, where AC, right, and it's called direct current. AC is called alternating current, and it's kind of more of a sine wave, and it's kind of off and on and off and on and off and on. And that's the kind that we primarily use in most of our electrical appliances that are in our houses. So an inverter allows us to take the stored direct current energy from a battery and turn it into alternating current, so that we can use that to power the things that we use most every day. Makes sense so far? That's a very quick overview, but that's the basics of it, right? So we're gonna play trivia for a second. In an earthship, what is the most important battery?
Sun.
Somebody said something. What was it?
The sun?
The sun? No, the sun's the power source for all of this, right? Solar power, right?
Thermal mass.
Right? All these tires behind us are the most important battery in an earthship. In a normal house, what do we do? What takes up most of the energy that we use in a house day in and day out? Doing what?
Electricity.
Yeah, heating and cooling. Maintaining the temperature of the house is what takes up most of the energy. And so one of the key principles of solar power and earthships is that we're going to try to interact with the environment as it exists to reduce our total need. There's energy around us all the time right now in the form of
The sun.
sunshine, right? More energy than we could possibly actually use. And it's here and it's readily available. We just have to have a way to capture and store it and let it back out when we want it for our use. And so the most important battery in an earthship is these walls, because they're massive. And if I can store enough energy from the sun inside those walls, guess what I can do to my house in the wintertime? I can heat it, absolutely. So if the most important battery, right? If the most important battery in an earthship is the walls, is the mass of those tires and dirt inside the walls, what's the most important solar panel?
The windows.
The one that works.
The windows, right? The entire south face of an earthship is glass, and so if this is our earthship, right, we've got all our tires around here, that's our battery. That's our battery, and all the glass along that front wall is our solar panel, and that's allowing the energy from the sun to kind of get into the batteries, right? So let's talk about the other parts of that system real quick. Charge controller. Oh yeah, right? What's the purpose of a charge controller? keeps me from overcharging the batteries, right? Keeps me from overcharging the batteries. And so in this design of the Earthship, our charge controller is going to be the eave of the roof that's going to go past the glass face, so that if this is, that's too dramatic, right? If this is the front face of my building, the eave of the roof is going to go past that front face, so that in the summertime, as the sun comes up, it's shining down, it's not going to let the energy from the sun get into those batteries and overcharge it and get the inside of the house too hot. But then as the sun goes south in the winter, right, it's going to let more and more sunlight in to charge those batteries inside the walls as I go, right? So it sounds silly at some level, but the Earthship itself is a solar system, right? A solar energy system. Now,
wait a minute.
Yes.
So the eave, how far out does it come to do that?
Right, so we calculate the angle based on the heat, right? Based on how warm it is at different times of the year. And so basically we try to do it so that between mid-fall and mid-spring, no sunlight actually gets into the interior space of, no direct sunlight gets into the interior space of the house, because here that's too warm. In a colder climate, you would have less of that, so that you got more solar penetration the rest of the time. And in this design, our design here, actually off the front of the building, we're gonna have greenhouse hoops that come down off the front, and they'll just be like, if you see the little greenhouse off to the left, right, there'll be just like half of those coming down to another tire wall right here. And then, so for example, in the fall, right, like, you know, up until this week, right, it's still been pretty darn warm here. I wouldn't have wanted a lot of solar energy getting into the house because it would have been too warm. And so at that point, I can keep shade cloth on the top of the greenhouse to reduce the amount of energy that's going into the interior of the house. And again, I'm using that greenhouse kind of like the charge controller to keep the house from overcharging and having too much energy in that battery. Now, because we've used the sun and designed the Earthship as a solar system itself, what do we have left for energy needs inside the house? Not very much, right? Not very much, really. And so the biggest energy draw in most homes is heating and cooling. The next biggest energy draw is hot water, right? In most homes, we'll be using solar for that as well, right? After that, it's the refrigerator, right? In the Earthships, that's the biggest draw, is the refrigerator to keep your food cold. But by the time we're done, we've got, you know, we need to power a refrigerator. We need to power some overhead lights, maybe a water pump or two, and some convenience plugs to you know, keep our phone charged and keep our, you know, batteries for our laptop or our electric drill or whatever charged. There's just not a lot of power needs left. And so it allows us to design down the whole system so that the amount of energy that we actually need on a day-to-day basis is really, really low. So let's walk through the part of the system that you guys actually probably wanted to learn about, right? The actual solar power system. So pretty straightforward, really, and we've got these same 4 parts, right? So what's this? Solar panel, yeah. And so on the solar panel, I've got 2 of them kind of linked together here. I've got a positive and a negative, right? I've got a positive and a negative coming out of that. I've got 2 panels linked together, but I've got a positive and negative coming out, and that's going to come into, tell this has been sitting out at the job site, right? A little dusty, right? That's going to come into our charge controller. And from that charge, and so the power coming in from the cables is going to the charge controller itself. On that, I've got a fuse in here so that for some reason, if something were to go wrong, right, if it were to get, the solar panels got struck by lightning or something, right, it would blow that fuse out and protect the rest of the system. Now, from my charge controller, I've got it running from the charge controller, I've got it running up into the battery. And again, between the battery and the charge controller, I put another fuse, right? So that, again, if something were to go wrong on the battery side of the system, I'm not blowing up my charge controller and my solar panels. Pretty straightforward. And then out of the battery, then I can run the rest of the stuff that I need to do. And in this instance, I've got two ways for the power to come out. I've got standard kind of 12 volt, car plugs built into the side of it so I can charge my phone, which I was at 30% when I got here this morning, and now I'm at 67. It's working, right? From a few minutes ago. And then I've got a standard inverter, this is a 1,000-watt inverter that just hooks up. It's designed to hook up to a regular car battery, and I can have that hooked into the system. Now, a system this small, in fact, this exact system, over this summer I was working on an Earthship build in Colorado for a month. And for a month, I had a dorm fridge, a dormitory style fridge, Christmas lights in my camper, laptops, phones, and cordless battery powered tools running off of this system continuously. While I was there for the summer. And so the system that you see right here in front of you, you might want to add one battery to it just in case you had a bunch of cloudy days. But with these 200-watt solar panels, 2 deep cycle batteries, a 1,000-watt inverter, I could run the entire house that we're going to have behind you, to include a refrigerator in the kitchen and overhead lights and the water pumps that would be needed to move the water around the system, and convenience plugs to, charge your phone and your laptop. Now, could I hook like a table saw up to it and go to work? No, not at all, right? There's not enough energy capacity there. But one of the beautiful things about these is that we've designed the system itself to be very, very simple and have very little power needs because we designed the system as a whole to have very few power needs to begin with, and that enables you to design a system that doesn't cost a whole lot of money. This entire system with I just priced it this morning on Amazon to double check, right? For 2 solar panels and a charge controller, you can get that for $320 on Amazon, right? This is a 100 amp hour deep cycle battery, which is a pretty big battery. You're going to get that for about 100, and you can get that for about 120. You can get one of these inverters for about $60. But all things told, for right around $500, you can build yourself a pretty darn good backup solar electrical system that it would at least allow you to, keep all the food in your refrigerator from spoiling if something were to go wrong with the electrical grid. And so that's an easy way to kind of do this. So that is it. That's the basics of it. On that, and so it is, you're hooking it's just in order, right? The solar panel, I don't have a black, so I'm gonna do this, right? So I'm gonna have my solar panel with a positive and a negative going into my charge controller. From my charge controller to my battery, I'm gonna have a positive and negative going into there. And from the battery to my inverter out to my other power source, I'm gonna have that stuff going in there. I'm gonna put a fuse, right, inside each of these kind of different areas to do that. And I'm probably also going to add a little gauge, right, here that lets me know how much power is in the battery to be used, and I'm going to put a little gauge right here that's going to let me know how much power is coming from the solar panels into the system. So right now, that's it. I will answer questions if you guys want to come and like tinker with this, and I'll answer questions for a few minutes, and then we'll get going. Questions? Yes?
You can't use a microwave oven.
So if you're designing a solar system for yourself, you literally do kind of this energy audit, right, for the system as a whole as you design it, and you add up how much energy does a microwave oven take in watts, all right, and then how many hours a day you would be running that, and you start adding all of that stuff up, right? And after you've done that kind of energy audit to add up all of the power that you use, right? Joe's in trouble. Coffee pots are bad, right? Like they use a lot of power, right? So you add up what all of those different things use, and then you design your system backwards from that point. At that point, then you've got to say, okay, if I need 2,000 watt hours a day, then I just start building my system backwards. So these are 100-watt solar panels, right? So they're bringing in, so that's 200 watts. During a given day, they have we have what's called insolation hours, not insulation like foam around the building, but insolation, how much sun power is coming in. And on average, here in New Mexico, we get about 6 hours of insolation a day, right? So this 200 watts of panels times 6 hours is going to give me 1,200 watt hours of power, right, on a given day. And so I have to have that much energy coming out of the panels, and then I have to have that much battery space to store it based on when I'm using that power. So sometimes what people will do is you certainly have to have enough solar panels to get what you need. You might not necessarily have to have that full capacity in batteries. So some people will say, all right, well, I'm only going to do laundry when the sun is shining. For two reasons, right? One is because then the sun is going to, directly, I can almost immediately use the power to run the washing machine, but then an electric dryer is completely out of the question. So I'm going to do laundry when the sun's shining and let the sun do the work of drying the clothes, right? And so there are some things that you can do to fudge with that. And so the answer is yes, you can do it. So in this Earthship, right, you see the entire power system right in front of you. On a building that I worked on last fall, they had, this is 200 watts of solar panels. They had 2,400 watts of solar panels. Enough batteries to fill up the space of the entire car behind you, and but that house had a complete shop in it with a 2-car garage and a charging station for the person's electric car, right? So you can do it. It's just a question of designing the system around what those needs are.
And what about this Earthship? What were you use? Propane for the?
Yep, propane for cooking. Yep, and in most of the time for the Earthships, we use solar power for the primary hot water, and then have an on-demand propane backup to that only kind of kicks in if you need it. But that's on kind of something that you would do for a typical family. You're probably not necessarily going to do that for a homeless person unless they've kind of stabilized for themselves. They've got we design the system so that we can grow them over time based on people's capacity to take care of it and to kind of earn those next steps.